Austin Reaves is heading into one of the most important years of his career, a contract year that could shape not only his future with the Lakers, but also the trajectory of the franchise itself. And as always, when it comes to Reaves, the debate around his true value has never been louder. On one side, you've got fans who think he's the next face of the league, a rising star that deserves a max deal and then some. On the other, you've got folks ready to trade him for a bag of chips and call it a win. But here's the truth that a lot of people seem to forget. Austin Reaves is a very good basketball player. Not perfect, not a superstar, not the savior of a franchise, but a legit, high-level contributor who's already proven he can show up when it matters. Let's talk numbers. When LeBron James is off the floor, Reaves puts up borderline all-star stats. We're talking 28 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists kind of numbers. That's not nothing. That's not inflated production from garbage time minutes. That's legitimate output when he's been asked to step up. But here's where the reality check kicks in. Doing that over 10 games when the spotlight isn't always on you is one thing. Doing it for 82 games every single night as the guy teams are game planning against, that's a different story. And that's what teams have to evaluate before throwing around $35 or even $40 million a year. Now with the new CBA rules, you just can't afford to make a mistake with these big contracts. Overpaying a guy like Austin Reaves, no matter how much you like him, could be the kind of decision that hamstrings your franchise for years. And when you're building around Luka Doncic, every dollar counts. Every roster spot matters. This is not the era where you can just say, let's go into the luxury tax and figure it out later. That's not how it works anymore. If Reaves ends up getting paid like a top 15 player in the league, but he plays like the 20th best shooting guard, that contract becomes a problem. Fast. And it's not like people aren't throwing out crazy numbers. Some reports suggest Reaves could ask for as much as $40 million a year. $40 million. For context, that's superstar money. That's the type of deal you give to someone who can carry a franchise through the playoffs, someone who could be your number 1 or number 2 guy deep into June. Is Reaves that guy? Based on what we've seen so far, flashes of brilliance, yes, but inconsistencies in the postseason, it's hard to justify that kind of investment. He's had playoff games where he looked like a $10 million player at best. And in this league, the playoffs are what really count. To be fair to Austin, it's not like he's demanding some outrageous deal out of nowhere. In fact, based on his own words, he sounds like a guy who understands the situation he's in. He knows what the Lakers mean to him. He's talked about how grateful he is for the opportunity they gave him, how they treated him and his family with nothing but respect. He even said that the $14.8 million player option he could decline is still, in his words, a lot of money. That kind of humility is rare in today's game. But that also makes this upcoming negotiation even trickier. Because now it's not just about numbers. It's about loyalty, expectations, and the pressure of building a championship contender while keeping the locker room intact. So let's imagine a scenario. Let's say Reaves is willing to accept something like $35 million a year. That's still steep for a guy who, let's be honest, is probably best as your third option on a title team. And if you're giving your third option that kind of money, you better be sure you can build around him smartly. That's where someone like DeAndre Ayton comes in. If Ayton can return to being the Phoenix version of himself, the guy who crashes the glass, protects the paint, and is a force in the pick and roll, then maybe the numbers start to make more sense. Maybe you get Reaves on a 4-year, $140 million deal, and Ayton for 4 years, $80 million. Now you're spending a combined $220 million on 2 guys who could be your third and second options, respectively. That's manageable if it all works. But if you go beyond that, if you start creeping into the territory where Reaves is making $40 million a year, then you're asking for trouble. Because what happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if Luka and Reaves don't mesh the way you hoped? What if Reaves never makes that leap into a consistent all-star caliber player? You're stuck. You're locked into a deal that becomes nearly impossible to move, and you end up in the same situation teams like Phoenix or Milwaukee are facing right now, stuck with bloated contracts and no flexibility. And in today's NBA, that's a death sentence. Now let's talk fit. Can Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves actually work together as your 2 lead guys? On paper, sure. Luka is ball dominant, creative, and can set the table for anyone. Reeves is smart, crafty, and can play off the ball just as well as he can handle it. They could be an effective 1-2 punch. But fit on paper doesn't always translate to wins on the floor. We need to see a real sample size of what those two look like together without LeBron in the mix. Because when LeBron's around, he's the safety net. If Reeves has an off night, LeBron covers the gap. When he's gone, that's when the real test begins. And it's not just about those two. If you're going to build around Luka and Reeves, you need elite role players, guys who can defend, shoot, and run the floor. You need two hyper-athletic wings who can guard multiple positions and knock down threes at a high clip. Think of someone like Jared Vanderbilt defensively, but with a reliable outside shot. If you can find two guys like that and slot them around Luka, Reeves, and Ayton, now we're talking. Now you've got a team that can compete with anyone in the league. Because if Luka is doing Luka things, and Reeves can be that 23, 6-6 guy, and Ayton gives you something close to what he did in his best Phoenix years, then yeah, this team has a chance. But again, it all hinges on Reeves. Can he be consistent? Can he stay healthy? So far, availability has actually been one of his biggest strengths. He plays. He suits up. And when your stars are sitting, he can step up and carry the team to a win. We've seen it, like when he walked into Boston with a roster full of backups and walked out with a win. That's not normal. That's not something you just get from any role player. That's why the Lakers are even having this conversation. That's why Reeves is in the position he's in right now. Still, being the guy once or twice a month isn't the same as being the guy every single night. Teams are going to key in on him. They're going to scout him, game plan for him, try to take him out of rhythm. That's what separates the all-stars from the rest of the league. The ability to deliver even when the whole defense is focused on stopping you. If Reeves wants $35 million or more, he needs to prove he can do that, not just in spurts, but all season long. And more importantly, he's got to show up when it matters most, in the playoffs. What makes this entire Austin Reeves situation even more complicated is that there are so many variables still unknown. One of the biggest questions is whether this current version of Reeves is anywhere close to his ceiling, or if we've already seen the best of him. Because if he's already peaking, then locking him into a massive long-term deal becomes a gamble. But if there's still a jump coming, if there's another level we haven't seen yet, especially in the playoffs, then the Lakers might be looking at a potential bargain even at $35 million a year. That's the kind of high-risk, high-reward decision teams are forced to make under the new CBA landscape, where even small missteps in roster construction can derail an entire championship window. And let's not act like Reeves isn't aware of the stakes. Based on the way he's talked about his current deal and the potential extension, you can tell this isn't just about chasing a bag. This is a guy who genuinely loves being in Los Angeles, who feels connected to the franchise, and who doesn't want to be seen as someone trying to hold the team hostage over money. When he talks about turning down the $14.8 million player option, he's not brushing it off like it's pocket change. He called a lot of money. He knows what that means for most people, including himself. So when he says he's just trying to get what he feels he's earned, not something outrageous, not something that breaks the bank, you believe him. But that still leaves us asking, what exactly is that number? Because if he's thinking in the 35 to 40 million range, then we have to talk about value. If you're paying a guy near max money, then he has to impact the game every night, not just when LeBron is resting or when the spotlight's dimmed. That means delivering under pressure in the playoffs against top-tier competition. And let's be real, Reeves has had moments where he's looked shaky in those environments. He's had games where the physicality ramps up and he disappears. That's not uncommon for a young player, and he's still learning. But the fact remains, the postseason is where reputations are made and contracts are justified. Now let's look at it from the Lakers' point of view. They've been through this before, locking into big deals that didn't pan out. They're still trying to build a sustainable core around Luka Doncic and whatever version of LeBron James they have left. They can't afford to get this wrong. If Reeves takes up a massive portion of the cap and underperforms, that handcuffs the front office from making necessary moves. And even though Reeves brings a lot to the table, leadership, hustle, offensive versatility, high basketball IQ, none of that means much if it doesn't translate to winning at the highest level. This is where someone like DeAndre Ayton becomes so crucial. If Ayton can deliver like the player we saw in Phoenix during the finals run, then maybe it eases the pressure off Reeves. Maybe you don't need him to be a borderline all-star every night. Maybe he can just be himself, a glue guy, a spark plug, a secondary playmaker who gives you 23, 6, and 6 without being the focal point. That's when his $30 million price tag starts to look more reasonable. But if Ayton doesn't live up to that expectation, or worse, regresses into the version of himself that frustrated so many Suns fans, then suddenly all the pressure falls back on Reeves and Luka to carry this team. And that's a dangerous situation. The thing is, if Luka continues to play at the level we've seen, and if he gets even more efficient, he's good enough to elevate almost anyone. He doesn't need a second superstar. He just needs dependable, dynamic players who can hit open shots, make smart cuts, and not be liabilities on defense. Reeves can be that. He's shown flashes of it already. But consistency is the difference between being a helpful role player and being a guy who can command a near-max contract. The Lakers are clearly hoping that a post-LeBron era built around Luka, Reeves, and Ayton can become a championship core. But everything depends on how these pieces fit together. Chemistry isn't built in a lab. It takes time, and there's no guarantee it works, no matter how good things look on paper. Luka is going to dominate the ball, and rightfully so. Reeves will need to adjust to that, because he's at his best when the ball is in his hands. If those two can figure out a rhythm, a dynamic where Luka creates the initial pressure and Reeves makes the right read off of that, then you've got something special. But if it turns into a situation where Reeves is constantly playing out of rhythm, where Luka feels like he has to do everything himself, that's when problems start to creep in. Defensively, there's also a lot to consider. Neither Luka nor Reeves are known for being lockdown defenders. That means you have to construct the rest of the roster very carefully. You need long, athletic wings who can cover ground, switch assignments, and take on the toughest matchups every night. You need rim protection. You need toughness. Because you can't afford to have 2 weak points on the perimeter and expect to survive 4 rounds of playoff basketball. It's doable, but it requires near-perfect roster building. And then there's the question of health. Reeves has been one of the more durable players on the team, which is a huge asset. In a league where load management and injury concerns dominate headlines, just being available is half the battle. Reeves shows up. He plays hard. He gives you effort every night. That alone makes him more valuable than some players who have more raw talent but can't stay on the court. But even that has its limits. You can't pay someone based only on reliability. At some point, production has to match the paycheck. Before we continue, we ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Lakers updates. Moving on, whispers are swirling across Los Angeles, and the rumor mill is working overtime. The Lakers may have pulled off a coup that could shift the balance of power in the Western Conference. According to insiders close to the situation, Bradley Beal, the prolific scorer currently donning Clippers colors, could be heading just down the hall at Crypto.com Arena to suit up in purple and gold. The move, if confirmed, will be nothing short of seismic for a franchise already steeped in championship lore. Beal, long regarded as one of the league's most gifted offensive guards, brings a reputation for smooth shooting and clutch shot-making. Drafted 3rd overall in 2012 by the Washington Wizards, he has spent over a decade carving his name into the NBA landscape. His journey to Los Angeles via trade to the Clippers was seen as a chance for him to reboot his career in the spotlight of a contending team. Yet, the notion of crossing the locker room divide to join the Lakers adds another dramatic twist to his storyline. The Lakers, meanwhile, have been under pressure to maximize the twilight years of LeBron James while continuing to build around Anthony Davis. Critics have often pointed to their inconsistent backcourt play as a weak spot, especially in high-stakes postseason battles. Beal's arrival could instantly erase those concerns. His ability to create his own shot, stretch defenses, and complement ball-dominant stars might be exactly what the Lakers need to tilt the playoff chessboard in their favor. Still, the whispers remain unconfirmed. Neither camp has made public statements, and league officials have been careful to avoid addressing the speculation. Yet in the City of Stars, where headlines are as much about drama as they are about basketball. The idea of BEAL in a Lakers jersey is already igniting imaginations. For now, fans wait, debate, and dream, because sometimes the rumor is almost as thrilling as the reality. Stay informed exclusively about Los Angeles Lakers news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep receiving daily updates. Also, share your opinion on the news in the comments, as your contribution is crucial for the Lakers. Stay tuned for the next video.